It's that time of year again, and we are already at the first day of November. I wanted to record this video last night, but the day just went on and on and on, and I thought, no, it's going to be 10:30, 11 o'clock before I start recording. So in the end, I've come back from work today, had a little bite to eat, and I want to show you around just a couple of surfaces of the room where I'm going to be working across November, mainly in the evenings and definitely on 3 of the weekends, to be ready for the whole concept of NaNoWriMo, but which this year I'm preferring to choose and call manuscript in a month. Can you get a draft manuscript done from the beginning of the month to the end to your satisfaction? It doesn't have to be ready to print, doesn't have to be ready to publish and send to your audiences wherever they are and however they find you online or through print on demand bookshops, whatever the process is. But the idea of writing a book in a single month is a really great one. It served me really well over the years, particularly with a book which I've mentioned before called 10-Minute Budget. That was a book that came together in a November month a few years ago, and the whole thing was written, if I can find it, yes, it was written on my Alpha Smart Neo. This is a great device, and I've decided, I thought about it a lot last night, but I've decided that this year I'm going to go back to basics so that I have really what is simply a very tactile keyboard. I love the sound of these keys. It's a tactile keyboard. It's easy to use. I can take it anywhere. It has these little chapter headings or section headings, let's call them, 8 blocks of files. Each one can carry 10,000 words. So that's a lot more than I need for a book that I want to create this year in the course of NaNoWriMo. But that's how I'm going to approach the process. I know for sure that I'll be using my MacBook Air at some point to take whatever comes out of my Alpha Smart Neo and out of the many notebooks that I've already started compiling and working on with my notes and my ideas during the month that we know as Preptober or Preparation Month. And I've also got some beautiful stationery from various stores. I've got these gorgeous A4 notebooks, which I will be defining my ideas with. Refining, perhaps, is a better sense of using language, because I've already defined what the element of the books are going to be. When I was in Belgium back in July with Gabby, I went to a beautiful stationery shop. Look at the reflection on that, in fact. And I bought this lined paper. So it's got a margin down the side, but it's also got graph squares across it, but fairly dominant horizontal lines. So it's a multifunction book, and I really feel that I can use this one. The mark on this one is Clairefontaine. I was in a stationery store in Leeds a couple of months ago, and I picked up these books, which are produced by a company called Silvine, Silvine, and these, again, very beautiful, but I like the kind of traditional school format notebook that they have to the front, where you can put your name or your class number if that were your situation. But again, beautiful lined paper on the inside, and that's 80-gram paper, so that will very comfortably cope with some of the pens I will use for bringing my notes together and the ideas that I can add. And then last week I went into a stationery store in Bradford, and I bought 2 of these absolutely gorgeous books by C. White of Brighton. If I can show that to you there, C. White of Brighton. If I pop my glasses on, I can actually look at the quality of these. Yeah, I'll hold that up there while I read the details again. But it's a recycled sketchbook made using rescued coffee cups, called Cup Cycling as opposed to Upcycling by James Cropper. Versatile artist's paper, acid-free, vegan-friendly. Who the hell is going to eat their notebook? That's a first for me. Vegan-friendly, 140-gram paper, A4. So these will be absolutely gorgeous to write with. one of these I could almost see becoming a commonplace notebook and being a place where I put the poetry collections that I enjoy reading and the extracts from. Often I write the first pages of novels I've been reading in my commonplace books, and I could see that as being useful. But for the month of November, that's where we're focused. These are what I've got to add my notes and my thoughts and capture my ideas in as I take ideas from the scraps that I've been jotting down over the course of October. So I've been using one of my Leica A6 notebooks. I've been using one of my Moleskines, which is a lined notebook. And I've also been adding some thoughts on here. You saw a video I recorded just a few weeks ago where I wrote for quite a long time on my AlphaSmart. And what I was doing there was jotting down ideas that would serve me as we come into November. So we're now in November, and I have a fairly clear sense of what I want to write in the course of this whole new month. I said I would share with you aspects of my working environment, or the workspace, that I'm going to be using as we work through November and create our own new books. But this will be mine. You saw a desk a couple of days ago when I opened up the box that I had from Cult Pens, and on that desk, which is an old shed door that I've had for several years, but which sits over a different desk, it gives me a nice working space. I love the fact that I know I'm working at a desk where the surface is kind of beaten and weathered from years of being a door in a garden. But the new one I'm using is completely different. This is a very modern desk, and you can probably hear a little bit of motor noise in the background as I press a button here. But I think you'll see what the new desk is, and I want to show you how I'm using it and the things that I have put on my desk for NaNoWriMo, so that I can help myself to write something I'm really pleased about. And here it is. How amazing is this? So here we are at my NaNoWriMo desk, my manuscript in a month. I keep calling it the old name, but I want to try and use that name less than previously, just because of all the stuff that went on with the organization. Let me talk you through what I've actually put up here on my desk. At the back area against the wall, I've got a selection of books which mean quite a lot to me, and which recently I've been dipping into for ideas for a detective fiction story, but also through another book that I'm working on, and for the ideas within that. One of the other things I've been doing a lot more recently is adding to my commonplace book and taking sections from books I've been enjoying. So I've got Hugh Thompson, The Green Road into the Trees here. I've got a Henning Mankell book, Italian Shoes. I've got a Patrick Leigh Fermor book, which I haven't read before, but I opened it in that book haul that I shared with you last month, The Broken Road. I've got some recent Graham Greene novels, and I've got crime books by Ed McBain, Graham Greene, Ellie Griffiths, Michael Connolly, and my very favourite Henning Mankell, his first book, Faceless Killers. So I've got those as a backdrop to what I'm going to be working on throughout the course of this month. I've got a stock of pens and highlighters, because I'll be working through some of the books that I've got here to help me, but also I will in the notebooks that I showed with you a few minutes ago, particularly this beautiful Sea White of Brighton, the plain books with the 140 gram paper. I'm going to be sketching out ideas using some fountain pens and developing those ideas over the next few days before I launch on Monday into some fairly steady writing every single night. I'm using, as I've said, my AlphaSmart Neo. If I switch that on, this is opening a file that I have already begun adding words to during October. And the content of this, I will download it to my MacBook tonight, print it off, and start to use that to flesh out my 3-act structure and look at what scenes that I put into each part of the book. So that will be straightforward. And I've got these as my sketching notes or my resource books. So I'll put those to one side. In terms of other things I'm using, a book that I read years ago, which I go back to again and again, The Call of the Writer's Craft. This one's by a man called Tom Bird. He wrote it a long time ago. He was, or still is, to be honest, a man who does regular writing retreats and events as part of the Sedona community in the western states of America. But it's a very good book. It says, use your heart and your head to write a successful book. Getting a book written and published is as much about talent and creative drive as it is about determination and business practice. With the call of the writer's craft, you can release and sell the book within you, waiting to be born, starting now. I had never heard of any 30-day writing program when I bought this book years ago. I bought it, I'll tell you how long ago I bought it, because I bought it in a Books Etc. store in Yorkshire before they closed down. So probably going back 10 or 12 years, but it was a super book. When I bought this book, I had never written a book myself. So this has been with me on the journey, and it's really good. Here's a point I've just highlighted. I'll read that out to you. It says, it is absolutely essential for you to keep in mind that at its core, writing is a very deep and personal art form expressed most effectively through passion or emotion. Amazing. I love what's in this book. There are so many lovely things that I find that are very important, and it has served me well over many, many years. Here's something that I practice now, but I never used to before. We're talking about writing, which, because of all the reasons I stated in the previous principle, is best done fast. In fact, the slower you write, the more interference you will encounter, and you'll find more writing areas, and you'll find more writing errors when you work at a slow writing speed because of the limbic process. So, lots of things. You can complete a book in 3 to 5 weeks by writing 2 hours a day, 6 days a week. Do the maths. 2 hours a day at a pace of 1,500 words per hour is 3,000 words per writing session. 6 days a week is 18,000 words a week. At that rate, how long would it take you to write a 60,000 word book, which is somewhere near the average length of an adult American book? Yes, you get where I'm coming from. Another principle here, principle number 10. You're doing your best writing when you don't know where you're going. Part of the thing that I learned growing up when I was talking to my English tutors and authors who were in the village where I was a teenage boy was the idea that they would drag out a story. It might take 2 years or 4 years to create a book. Well, no book that I've ever written, and I've only written 9, no book that I've ever written has taken me more than perhaps 3 months of dedicated work. Yes, I've dragged that work out over a long period of time, but the actual process was a very short one if I log the days where I actually wrote. And I think part of the process that any writing challenge puts in front of us is it gives us that opportunity to look ourselves in the mirror and say, you want to write this book, so get on and write the damn thing instead of thinking about it and procrastinating about the process. What else have I got in my little arsenal of useful goodies? Well, there's a book here by Gonzalo Celorio. It was a book I started reading. I'll just bring it up to the camera. It was a book I began reading quite a while ago, about 2 months ago, when I was on the flight from Mexico back to Yorkshire, and it's called And Let the Earth Tremble at Its Centres. One of the beautiful things about this book is the way that the author captures lots of the ancient and important buildings in Mexico City. And there is an aspect of one of the things that I'm writing at the moment, which I will develop over the course of November, that will allow me to give some of the buildings in my story their own character. There's one particular building, I won't say what it is, I've featured it in some of my shorts over the last year, but there's one particular building that I walk into and I am immediately wrapped by this atmosphere of care and support and this enormous sense of the history that literally drips from its walls in a good way, in a positive way. It's been a building that has been in various guises for several centuries. And when I have written there, when I've gone into the library in that building, I feel like I'm a part of it. I feel as though I've never been away from that building. And yet I'm absolutely convinced that this last year is the first time I've ever discovered it. I've had so many years in Mexico City, But as soon as I step off the street into that building, I know that I belong in this space. And what I want to be able to do with an aspect of the story that I'm writing is capture that essence of connecting with a building, connecting with somewhere that has its own history, where so many events have happened, so many lives and deaths have passed through the doorways of that building and through the archways and courtyards of that building. So that's a very important book for me, by Gonzalo Celorio, and Let the Earth Tremble at Its Centres. So that's a great book. Two other books I've got, recent paperbacks which I've been reading, and I absolutely adore this first one, is How to Write Crime Fiction by Sarah Williams. I bought this book at Foyles in London. I wonder if I've written, sometimes I do. Yes, I bought this book at Foyles in London when I was down in London at the Writers' Conference, or the Indie Publishing Conference at the South Bank, and I came home on the train and I read it the following day when I was at home back in Yorkshire, and I absolutely love it. It's a great book, and it's going to be part of my armoury for Making Good in November. She says, or the blurb at the back of the book says this: using examples from contemporary crime writers, this book provides practical pointers, clear explanations, and inspiring exercises to develop your skills. It's an amazing book, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it take its own place within the way that my month develops. Here's a little thing about place, in fact. Every place has to be clear in your head, and you need to know how each place relates to the others, how it is possible to move between them, and how long it would take. It's no good providing an alibi for one of your characters that it requires them to be able to have lunch in one place and afternoon tea in another on the same day, or even to be in the cellar or the attic of a house simultaneously. You may need to draw a number of maps depending on what you have happening and how much ground you have covering. I talked about sense of place. One of the books I was reading at lunchtime is a book by a Japanese-American author, and I will put it in the description because I have it downstairs. It's not upstairs here in the study. But it's called The Geography of Home, and that's an amazing book which ties in very significantly to the building that is a character in this new story. And it's how we relate to the places we live in, the connection we have with each room, or the way light comes in through a window, and the space we have. For example, I like the space here. This is a house I've had for 8 years now, nearly 9 years. And every creak of every floorboard, every door that closes, every window that opens, and you hear the ratcheting of the catch as the window opens or is closed and put in place. All of those are familiar to me. So I'm writing in a place where I feel really, really comfortable. Book 3 on my must-have list on the desk here is Lawrence Block on writing fiction. I bought this at least 15 years ago when I was writing more non-fiction, and it was a great book that was there waiting for me, saying, Nick, come on, try writing stories rather than non-fiction subjects about money and budgeting and declutter. And now is the time for me to take full advantage of this. I've read through it chapter by chapter over several years very slowly, but I want to take some lessons from this book, Spider, Spider, Spin Me a Web, Lawrence Block on writing fiction. And those are really all I need over this coming month, those 4 books that I've mentioned and discussed with you. But also I need to give myself a push to make things happen. And one of the things I've done to give myself a little push is I have 2 very simple food ingredient jars. I've put a few gold coins in here. These are £1 coins in England. I've got to go to the bank tomorrow and get some more because I want to have the idea of maybe up to 50,000 words or 50 scenes. And the idea will be that every time I finish a scene, I take a coin from here and I drop it into the other jar. That will mean that at the end of my month of writing, at the end of that commitment to at least a couple of hours worth of writing every single day, I will have something that is meaningful and has some depth to it and the story is well developed. But I'll also have £50 in the jar to go out and have a nice meal with my wife so we can go out and celebrate the fact that I have finished that project. What are you going to do as we work through November? Have you set a plan to take an existing manuscript, maybe something you've been jotting down in one of your journals or a file of facts, and you want to develop it and take it to a finished stage, to be at a point of completion? What is it that you've got that you can say, no, I want to grab my devices, I want to work with whatever there is and start to create the new piece of work and get it to a point of starting it, developing it, deepening the story or the non-fiction project, taking it to a good ending where there's a series of arcs for the character and the way the whole story develops, and say, I've done it, I've finished, I've got a rough draft manuscript in a month. What can you do? What do you want to do? And how can you knuckle down to your writing space over the course of this new month and create something that you are excited about, but also which you're really proud of? Wherever you are in the world, we are now in November. It's an opportunity for you to take these ideas from here, commit them to keyboard, to paper, to notebooks, and to write in such a way that works for you. Nobody else matters in this situation. It's about how you or I take our ideas and we encapsulate them first into an outline, and then we expand and develop that into a story that says, okay, I'm happy to type the end and know that I have completed my manuscript in a month. I hope that's been really helpful. I've really enjoyed just sharing little snippets and little short videos around the room, but I hope you can take something from this story and the sharings of loads of other people on YouTube and pick up on some of their ideas to make this a month that works for you.